Welcome to this explainer on Sociology Chapter 10. Today, we are breaking down what is absolutely one of the most influential, highly debated, and widely studied theoretical frameworks in human history. We're talking about Marxism. Whether you are actively prepping for exams like your BA, UGC NET, or UPSC, or honestly, even if you just want to understand the hidden mechanics of how society actually operates on a day-to-day basis, you are in the right place. We're going to take these notoriously complex sociological concepts and make them incredibly clear and easy to grasp. So let's jump right in. Okay, so I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever wondered why there is such a massive, sometimes mind-boggling gap between the rich and the poor? It's a question almost everyone asks at some point, right? Think about walking through any major modern city. You will see immense, jaw-dropping wealth existing literally right across the street from severe, heartbreaking poverty. So the question becomes, is this just a natural fact of human existence? Are we just wired this way? Or is it the direct result of a very specific, man-made system? Well, this exact observation is the starting point for the entire framework we are unpacking today. And to take that thought a step further, why does the extremely hard worker often remain poor, while the owner just seems to get richer and richer? Why is there this constant underlying friction, this class struggle in our communities? These aren't just modern questions. These exact everyday observations drove philosopher and sociologist Karl Marx way back in the 19th century. He was watching the incredibly grueling, smoky, dangerous factory conditions of the Industrial Revolution firsthand, and he essentially set out to uncover the why behind this entire dynamic. To really answer those questions, we need to establish an academic baseline. So what exactly is Marxism? By definition, it is a sociological and economic theory originally developed by Karl Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels. At its core, the theory argues that society functions primarily through its economic bases and class relations. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Marxism doesn't just look at culture or politics or art in a vacuum. It makes a very bold claim. You cannot possibly understand a society without first looking at how it produces its goods and how it distributes its wealth. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, an introduction to Marxism. 2, historical materialism. 3, class struggle and exploitation. 4, alienation and false consciousness. And finally 5, dialectical materialism and revolution. Section 1, Introduction to Marxism. So, if you look at the main pillars of Marxist theory, you'll see a few big academic terms: historical materialism, class struggle, mode of production, exploitation, alienation, and false consciousness. Now, don't let these terms intimidate you. They aren't just isolated random ideas. Think of them more like connected gears in a single massive engine. As we'll see, the mode of production creates the environment for class struggle. That struggle leads directly to exploitation. The exploitation results in alienation for the worker. And finally, false consciousness is the mental shield that keeps the whole system running smoothly without falling apart. It's all connected. Section 2, historical materialism. All right, let's look at a concept called historical materialism. The easiest way to understand this is to picture society as a giant building. Marx's theory says that the economic base, which means the factories, the tools, the technology, and who owns property, that is the solid foundation of the building. Absolutely everything else, politics, the legal system, religion, art, family structures, education, all of that forms the superstructure built on top. So what's the big takeaway here? According to Marx, the base dictates the superstructure. If you change a society's economic foundation, the entire culture built on top of it is forced to shift and change right along with it. Section 3, class struggle and exploitation. Now we zoom in on the people living inside this system. In a capitalist society, the Marxist framework identifies two distinct opposing classes. On one side, you have the bourgeoisie. These are the owners of the means of production. They own the factories, the land, the raw materials, the tech. On the other side, you have the proletariat. This is the working class. Because they don't own the factories or the land, the only thing they really have to sell is their own labor, their time, and their physical effort. And because their fundamental economic interests are completely opposed to one another, owners want to pay less to make more profit, while workers want to earn more for their survival, they are locked in a constant, inevitable state of struggle. Let's ground this abstract idea with a super practical example. Imagine a shoe factory. The owner, the bourgeoisie, provides the sewing machines and the raw leather. The workers, the proletariat, spend all day actually doing the heavy lifting, producing hundreds of pairs of shoes. Now those shoes hit the market and sell for a really high price. But the workers, they don't get a percentage of those high sales. They get a fixed, usually low wage that was agreed upon before they even started their shift. So the vast, overwhelming majority of the new wealth generated by those shoes stays right at the top with the owner. And that specific mathematical difference is exactly what leads us to the concept of surplus value. When the factory owner pays a low fixed wage but sells the finished goods for a high price, the difference left over is profit. Marxism defines this exact profit as surplus value. And here is the kicker. The theory views this surplus as the literal unpaid labor of the worker. The worker's sweat and time generated the actual value of the shoe, but the owner kept the excess cash. In the Marxist framework, this extraction of value isn't just a byproduct of business, it is the root cause and the very definition of exploitation. Section 4. Alienation and false consciousness. So how does all this impact the human being doing the work? Marx argued that this capitalist system profoundly, deeply harms the worker's psyche, causing something he called alienation, which happens in 4 distinct steps. First, alienation from the product. Imagine spending 40 hours a week building a luxury car you could never actually afford to buy. Second, alienation from the work process itself. You aren't creating something from start to finish. You're just performing repetitive, dictated motions on an assembly line. Third, alienation from other workers. Instead of cooperating, you are forced to compete with your coworkers for shifts, promotions, or just to keep your job. And fourth, the most tragic one, alienation from oneself. The worker basically loses their creativity, their autonomy, and their true human potential. Now, you might be wondering, if things are really this bad, and workers are being exploited and alienated every single day, why don't they just immediately rise up and rebel? The theory answers this giant question with a concept called false consciousness. This refers to ideologies and beliefs spread by the ruling class that actively prevent workers from recognizing their true situation and interests. Remember the superstructure from earlier? The ruling class uses those tools, the laws, the media, the educational system, to frame the current economic setup as totally natural, fair, and based purely on merit. It acts as an invisible blindfold, keeping the working class from realizing their massive collective power. Section 5. Dialectical Materialism and Revolution. Okay, let's zoom back out to the macro level. How does society actually change over time? This brings us to dialectical materialism, which is essentially the Marxist theory of how history moves forward. It's a 3-step cycle. It always starts with a thesis, an initial state of society, like the capitalism we've been discussing. But built right into that system are inherent flaws and conflicts, which is the antithesis, like the intense class struggle between the owners and the workers. Eventually, over time, this tension builds and hits a breaking point, leading to a massive revolution. The dust settles and we get a synthesis, a completely new social reality. But the cycle doesn't stop. That synthesis just becomes the new thesis, and history pushes forward by continually resolving its own internal contradictions. Which leads us to a massive historical question. Will class struggle ultimately lead to a perfectly classless society? Marx theorized that as workers eventually overcome their false consciousness and unite globally, the final synthesis of this long dialectical process would be the complete overthrow of capitalism itself. The theoretical result? A brand new society where the means of production, the land, the factories, the tech, are owned collectively by everyone, theoretically ending the cycle of class struggle once and for all.
And just like that, we've mapped out the foundational mechanics of Marxism from Sociology Chapter 10. We walked all the way from the base building blocks of historical materialism and class struggle through the literal extraction of surplus value, down into the heavy psychological toll of alienation and false consciousness, and finally looked at the big picture engine of dialectical revolution. You now have a solid, highly structured academic grasp of this framework for your exams. But before we wrap up this explainer, here is the ultimate question I want you to take with you. Look closely at the economic structures around you today. Based on what we just learned, do you see a system that is slowly resolving its internal conflicts, or are we just building the pressure toward a brand new thesis? Think about it. Thanks for joining me today.